'Cause it's good. Love to eat turkey like a good boy should. 'Cause it's turkey to eat. So good. That clapping's messing my head up, man.
Hello, Archons Corner family. We're back for another podcast. I'm Dr. Sheep, and today I got Big Z.
Hey.
And Ewok Jr.
Hello, Keyforge community.
And we got nothing to talk about. Right? Isn't that what we were just saying?
End podcast. Well done, boys.
That's a wrap. Yeah, subscribe to the Patreon.
For more quality episodes like this.
Anyone, I don't even know where that much. Does anyone subscribe to us? If you don't, we wouldn't know. So.
Well, we are going to use...
You're both fired.
We're using some of it to pay for the KFPL charity donation match.
Yep. Oh, yes.
So we are using some of this money. Otherwise, I think Wookie is just squirreling it away for something.
I will say I have a beautiful new mic as a result, so I appreciate that. Wookie got it for me. Because my old one was really not great.
Oh, yeah, we did actually. Wookie gave me something with this box that did some sound thing at one point in time. I had no idea how to use that, so I gave it to Eric. I guess I should have gotten that back. But anyway, yeah, like we've gotten some upgrades for our whole procedure here with that, so we do appreciate.
Yeah, and I know Wookie
in earnest, we appreciate the Patreon funds that do help us get better gear.
Yeah, and Wookie was going ahead and running our website that was up for a while. I mean, there's a lot of background work that things are paid for. Unfortunately, things in the interwebs are not free. So while he's not here, he does do a lot of the background work.
Yeah, he is our slave. We just dump him audio files and videos and say, make them work. So we've made him our our producer, our editor.
Yeah,
it's editor-in-chief? Question mark? Editor for sure.
You know, I really like him in this spot. He's not on the podcast anymore, and he's doing a great job behind the scenes. So well done, Wookie.
Yeah, he's our key grip, I think. Fluffer.
Oh God. All right. Anyhow, yes. What's on our agenda today? Keep us honest.
All right.
It could get real bad real fast.
Well, since I terminated you both, we're going to talk a little bit about...
Wait. Are you FFG now? Come on, bro.
All right, fine. But we do have to have a moment of silence because 2 of our FFG employees have left, and that was kind of the news from this week. So a moment of silence. And I don't know if you guys know, but it looks like Matt Holland and then Alex Davey, different reasons for leaving, but one worked as OP coordinator and the other was working on miniatures, so not necessarily tying in with us. But that's about it that I know. I wish them both the best of luck in their future endeavors.
Yeah, I never got to... I think I saw Matt Holland, but I never met him, but I believe he was at one of the events that I was at. I have no idea who Alex Davey is. Sure, good guy.
Yeah, he's a creative content developer at FFG, is what his thing says.
Well.
And yes, he was on X-Wing Miniatures and Legion. So he was working on all those games that just got spun off to Asmodee's new, or whatever studio. They have that new. They spun off all of FFG miniature games over to Atomic Games. So
which is still an Asmodee company, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. Okay. So it sounds like they sent all of his work over there, but not him. So that's rough on him.
Yeah, especially now during COVID time. So hope you find something lucrative in the near future, Alex. That's got to be a little rough. So how do we think about this? We none of us can really know what this means for our game. We all love Keyforge. That's what we're here. That's what our podcast is about. What does this mean to you, Dan? How does this rationalize in your head as far as our card game world?
I don't think it is really going to mean that much to us. There's the question of, is FFG now Asmodee's board game studio, or is it going to become their card game studio, right? Because I mean, FFG for a long time was known for big board games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
I own a lot of them. Yeah.
Yes, but really in the more recent years, it's been a lot of LCGs, right? They do a lot of LCGs. So I'm kind of thinking, based off of talking to other people, and I can see where they're saying there's so many other Asmodee design studios that already do board games that's probably going to stay there, and FFG is going to be card games. But I think they specialize in LCGs, the living card games, so this beast that is Keyforge is still interesting.
Because in the past, however long, FFG is also Game of Thrones living card game, and is it also Marvel, the new one? See the ads for that. Is that FFG? Marvel Champion card game, whatever. No one knows. We are so prepared here, guys.
Sorry, just playing with my mic there. Yes, they are. Marvel is FFG, that Marvel card game.
Yes, I just looked up a box. It's got a little FF symbol. So yeah, like I personally played the Game of Thrones card game. It was super fun. I played it for the first season. Enjoyed it. I was still like a, dinner table card game with my group of 8 friends that we always played card games with, and we did it for that summer, and that was it for us. We weren't competitive gamers, but it was a great game. Like it was fun. And then now we have Keyforge. In my opinion, the best IP card game that I've experienced, which is why I still play, why I love the game. And then I know nothing about the Marvel game other than it's their newest thing. But it's again a card game, right?
Yeah, I mean Marvel's there. You're looking at a Game of Thrones, and you also have L5R. So between that and Keyforge, you do have a number of LCG, CCG. You have a number of card game based mechanics that are there, or card based games. I kind of fall in the other realm, and I'm going to be very honest about that. I think that it's a very interesting piece of how FFG was acquired by Asmodee and what we're seeing from the outside. Asmodee really wanted the presence for the board games. So it is a little concerning to me, but I think that we have a phenomenal game here, and it definitely outperformed early on. We've fallen into this pandemic, which is a little bit of a bummer because I think Worlds Collide really is starting to turn some things around. But I need to see a little bit more from FFG as to what they can do to help promote this game. I think the community is absolutely amazing, and it continues to stomach kind of keeping this game actually alive. But the question is, how long is this pandemic going to go on, and how long can we go ahead and find things to talk about and continue to push? We got some great gameplay that's out there.
I know I've been working as far as trying to keep the community alive. Like FFG needs to cut me a paycheck, guys. Like seriously. But the KFPL we're ramping up for. We're in the middle of the top 16. I had my match. If you haven't had a chance, I don't know actually up publicly, but did not go great for me. So I'm out of the top 16 for the KFPL Adaptive Season 1, the inaugural season. Our next event is December 5th. It is Triad Top Cut. Not Triad. The Top Cut is 16. But as of yesterday, we made a decision as far as how we're going to do qualifiers for Season 2. We now know that Season 2 of the KFPL League will be Triad, and that the top 4 finishers in all of our monthly events will make the next season for the official KFPL. So if you want to come play in the the SAS Cap 75, all 3 decks have to be from a different set, Triad Best of 1 on December 5th. Top 4 will make it into Season 2 of the Keyforge Premier League. And we would be excited to have you. We're going to have 48 players in Season 2. So 16 of the people that came from Season 1. And then not me though, because I will be moving now that I'm out. Actually, as of right now, I am officially like just upper management for the KFPL, running events, promoting the season. I'll be doing some commentary very, very soon. So you'll get to hear me over at the KFPL if you want to listen to commentary. Mine's a little bit more critical than Jupiter's. But anyway, some people will tune in for just that. But yeah, I've definitely been working my butt off to promote keyforge, get people playing. Lots, as you just said, lots of high quality play. Like I've gotten to see and play with a lot of great players, and it's fun to see that still going on.
So just not high quality play from you.
Yeah, no. Like I am like, I don't know. Like I feel like I'm one of those super streaky. Like you don't see it as much in like football, but basketball. Like a long time ago, I used to watch basketball. I don't anymore, so don't even ask me if single players in the league right now. But I used to watch basketball a lot, and like basketball players are super streaky. They can go like 40-point games for a whole week and then like suck for a whole week. I feel like I'm that kind of basketball player. Like that's how I play keyforge. I can like literally go weeks and never lose a game. And then all of a sudden I'll lose every game. and I feel like just like the worst player in the world. Then unfortunately that week came this week when I happened to have my coat match, my ABR match, and my KFPL top 16 match, and I lost all of them, guys. It was not a fantastic day. So that actually happened over 2 days.
Well, that's all right. I followed suit, and I think I played 8 games like yesterday. I did my coat and my ABR, and I lost everything. I think I was favored in several of my matches, and I just could not make anything roll. A couple of play mistakes on my part, but just no matter what, like I was trying to play to my outs. I was following, instructions when you get into those bad 2-2-2 hands. You're looking in your deck and saying, okay, there's 13 cards and only 2 of them are logos. So I'm going to play the 2 logos cards from my hand, try to draw into something better, and no, what do you draw? 2 more logos cards? And there's only 2 in the deck. It's just one of those kinds of days where you just couldn't make anything roll. Your opponents are playing well, and you just can't do it. And that was yesterday. So thankfully my KFPL match is this weekend, so hopefully I can get this streak of bad out. But on the other hand, we got Ewok here, who's usually on the end of getting his butt kicked, and he's been winning everything. So.
See, these hands are raised. Keyforge community. I don't know what has happened. I know we have a pandemic out there. I know the world is upside down, but both of these top 10 players are getting rocked, and it's amazing over here in this seat. This seat is hot right now because I'm flabbergasted. I'm very appreciative that times have turned. I'll be honest. One of those differences for me is actually, practicing. I have a tendency to play different decks all the time. And so running the same deck over and over again. And number 2, having a best of 3. I find that I do much better with best of 3. And honestly, most of the games that I'm playing, we play in best of 1. You're in, you win or you lose. There is a definite skill when you're looking at multiple games, what you acquire from that first game, the knowledge base, and then to use it for games 2 and 3. But I've been hot. Not in our local chainbound, so it's not completely over the top. Local chainbound, not so great, but hey, that's where I bring some fun decks, and that's what it should be. So if you haven't checked out our chainbound on Sunday and Thursday, come out, have some fun, bring something that is entertaining and that you enjoy, and let's rock and roll with it.
Yeah, got crushed this week.
Yeah, I got destroyed. Man. So
Man.
On that though,
I won.
But it's fine. Like I've literally lost hundreds of games of Keyforge. I mean, it's I mean, that's part of the game. Like if you love a game, when you do get beat, you're able to recognize that and then just keep playing it and keep enjoying it. Like I definitely was frustrated the night I lost the KFPL and what was the second match?
The coat match.
No, that was the next day.
Oh, okay.
I lost the ABR and the KFPL on the same day. I remember I was not happy that night because both of those are best of 3 situations. So that's a lot of freaking losing in one day. That's more like that in itself was more losses than I've ever received in a day of a vault. Like that was rough.
Well, for those of us who are used to losing at the vault and having an absolute blast with those people, both men and women down at the bottom, and the kids who are also there, welcome. And it happens. And I think that's the piece, when I first started, it was a show on tilt. We all get on tilt. How do you get off that? How do you recognize it and be able to move on? Whether that's a vault, whether that's chainbound, whether that's one of the league games. whether that's just a series of games you're playing in a row. Sometimes you need to go ahead and step away from Keyforge. Sometimes you need to take some deep breaths. Sometimes it's a different deck. Find what works for you, but please don't let the game really carry your mood and determine what's happening. It's a great game, but we do have lives outside of this too.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do anything crazy. I was obviously upset. I went and did my elliptical workout and, burned it off some there and watched the show. And I feel good today. I mean, although I lost again the next day, which helped. but anyway,
I think that's a humbling piece, Z, that others can hear. Is okay, you're rated number 1 in the world there, but you still lose 2, and that it's a game, and that you can't go ahead and look at that. You're going to win all the time.
And I know some people will talk about make jokes about number 1. I've definitely never said I am the best player in this game. I think I know the best player in the game as far as, and when I talk about people as how good they are, it's generally in reference to live play, because online play is super different. The amount of knowledge you have is just bonkers compared to live play and real life factors. But so a really good player in live play is the best player, in my opinion, is someone that can consistently know what's going on, where they are in relation to their opponent for that individual matchup, and make the decisions based on that consistently throughout a day of Keyforge. And honestly, I think I think the best player I know is Nathan, and Nathan on my team, Nathan, and not the TTR. He's great too, and I don't know a lot of people well enough or seen a lot of their games to know that. Just I've seen Nathan play in enough situations to know that across all of those games that I've seen them play, he makes more consistently reliable decisions than me. And I think for whatever reason, right, whether you're just seeing the field at the moment, whether you're getting tilted, whether you get tired, whatever, we're human beings playing a very taxing game at times. And I think he maintains it the longest, because I've seen him in all the situations all the way up to winning both of the vaults that he's won. That's what makes players really good. It's not whether you can play one game of Keyforge really well, which is honestly what a lot of what we see in these leagues now anyway. So you will have people that do better in this situation online than a vault, because they can give all of their faculties all the resources for that one game and it's done. But it takes a lot more to do it at a vault and do that for 6 consecutive games with the the lack of good food. You start to get uncomfortable, all of the crap that goes on to playing in real life. And he's very, very good. So that's my 2 cents of what actually the difference is, is being able to maintain that focus and constantly have the mental acuity to really bear through. Not that this wasn't on our list to talk about, but anyway.
I can go ahead and interject and say, I don't know if it's best. Nathan's a phenomenal player. There's a lot of great players that are out there. And so I used to come in with this attitude. I was checking back with some of the Archons Corner primes and other things that we had done earlier. And it was well, how do you feel you're going to do today? And both Sheep and Wookie are I'm going to go ahead and lose. And my mentality is always, no, I'm going to go 4-2. I'm going to go 5-1 here. And so I seem to go high, and that also then can bring a little bit of tilt, a little bit of abstaining. But as I watch people from around the world, from all of these events, when we're playing in COAT, when we're playing in KFPL, when you start to see the individuals from around the world, I'm excited for Worlds. I hope this pandemic goes away so that we can actually get back to playing in real life, and then see all these people come together. And I know it's not going to be everyone, but it is phenomenal to see the different play styles, the different types of decks, and just there are some amazing people who are extremely generous and kind. There's also some great gamers that are out there. So I'm excited to see what we can do once we get out of this pandemic.
For sure, and which there's good news about. So hopefully, with the good news on the horizon with the potential vaccine, we will get out of it for next Christmas.
So that other piece that I saw on here, other news for this week, blasters are back?
So in a bunch of the games I've been playing, multi-character with the blaster thing is is happening. The triple Kirby's blaster. You were just playing against a triple Fran's blaster.
That's brutal.
Bouncing blasters is back, and like, how do you feel about that? Because those decks got to be pretty big money for a little while, and then they took away bouncing blasters briefly, and then through this semi-official
I don't
email?
like the email response rulings at all, honestly.
Me neither, because
I just don't. It doesn't seem... I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think in my mind. I know how companies work. So, like, there's just some random dude answering these emails, and because it's coming from FFG as an employee, it's then therefore going to be made official. I don't know. I preferred the rulings that we had coming from a judge system, which were judges that played this game a lot. We're very familiar with the rules and why the rules were the way they were and why the timings are the way they were. I think the new rules and the FAQ that talked about self-referential text was very clear, and I thought this was one of the things that was intending to stop, yet somehow an email is overriding that with very little reason why.
So the only question that I had is, in the updated rules, did they not specifically clarify for the blasters? Because I
don't think the blasters themselves are referenced in the rules, but it talks about self-referential. Yeah, it does. Like, that's fair. That's in there, and to my mind, the only thing I could think of it was referring when I first read the new FAQ was them. But there was no other card in my head that came to mind.
That was what was odd to me, is that they seem to have put work together for the FAQ, and then all of a sudden this almost goes against it. I shouldn't say almost. It does. It seems to go directly against it, and that's what was puzzling to me. So I don't care one way or another as long as we're consistent.
And there was one other thing on the... continue. So
I was just saying, for me, I would much rather hear one response coming from FFG, even with the delay. And I know I've been critical of that in the past, so that's my hand raised. I wish they would go faster, but I like the consistent piece is it's FFG. You're going to go ahead and explain, not via email, but through your cast and kind of do it that way.
Email response is the worst.
Well, you mentioned the Crucible cast, but I didn't see it because I haven't been watching theirs recently, but someone told me that they did a Crucible cast about Ghost Talk and Enraged.
Yes.
And
that was in the recent Crucible cast, and the way
this is also completely baffling to me. Go ahead, tell me what the actual cast said, because I still don't agree with this.
I don't have the actual cast here memorized, but it was very much, it was the one guy asking the other, and he's like, well, what do you have in there? It's like, well, and just the way he answers, he's like, well, Enrage says you can't reap, so it wouldn't work. And then
that's not what Enrage says, though.
I know, and then he's like, yeah, that's what it is. So Enrage, prevents you from reaping, so therefore the guy does not exhaust and doesn't reap. He would ready if he was exhausted, but he won't reap because he's enraged. And I'm just like, but the way the other guy, so it's Danny wasn't on the show, it was the other two designers.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just the way it was answered like if you ask me, what does Enrage do? Enrage means you can't reap. But that's not what Enrage actually reads, right? It says you cannot, you must fight if able.
Use must fight if able. That is that's Enrage.
Right. So it doesn't say you can't reap. So I think, that's what it felt like to me, is somebody made a rules call based off of how they think the rules work, but without referring to and just the whole way the conversation flowed. That's what it felt like. It did not feel like an exhaustive rule saying. It was hey, this is how we play the game, so this is how the rules work, and it didn't go along with what the rule book seems to say.
I guess I'm okay if you're on a podcast like this where we're shooting off the hip, and but if you're the designers, if you're coming from the company FFG, we have to be more consistent to be able to provide support for the more competitive players. This isn't for the tabletop peanuts and beer players, but this is for the players who are here. As long as we're consistent and say, this is how it's going to impact, we're going to change it and let you know via FAQ. That's where it's official and that's where we're going to follow. Great. We can all agree to that. But if it's just partial, hey, I'm going to send out this email. Like, I didn't receive the email. Does that mean that it's legal?
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
I saw it now afterwards, but
like I've run multiple
sketchy.
primes personally, and like if I was running one of them right now, and you ask me about either of these, I'm going to the FAQ, and in my world, Ghost Hawk allows the dude to reap because this, I'll read it verbatim. Enrage. When a creature with an enrage counter is used, it must be used to fight if able. Obviously, it cannot, therefore not able to fight through Ghost Hawk, so it can reap. Like, that's pretty damn clear. Like, I don't understand the Crucible cast at all. And this, like what you just said, like some random person gets an email response some other place in the country, like as a judge of these events, like that means very little to me. Like, it's not printed in a rule book.
Yeah,
like,
I mean that is super sketch for official rules because like I show you an email on my phone that, as we know, it's very easy to spoof email address.
Yeah,
So,
or even the other thing, like you're gonna pull up a Crucible cast, and that's like, still, I have this rule in the rule book that says this right here.
Yeah, and I do think that is a black eye when it's coming from a Crucible cast that's there. I will say, we always talk about how we want to make this better, so here's my suggestion. I've played other competitive games. There's one central spot. That's where all the rules go in. They are updated. You pick the frequency, but that's where I want to be able to check. Right now, that's been the FAQ. So that's where I'm going. I feel that is most reliable. But we need to be consistent as a community and go there versus having an email, having a Crucible cast, just pick one spot, and it should be written down in paper format. So if you're going to call that a website with the paper form, great. But whatever goes up on that Crucible cast, immediately import that over. You can do it right ahead of time. We work with plenty of different spreadsheets and docs. It's not difficult. It should be in there and updated if we're going to add it into the Crucible cast.
I agree. Like, both of these things bother me quite a bit. I know in the KFPL, we've kind of decided, at the moment we ran a last event, we decided against the blasters. I don't know whether Ghost Hawk is active in Crucible. I think it still lets you reap through Enrage, which it should.
I will tell you the blaster did have an impact in the ABR game yesterday. It wasn't in the long run, but it did impact my game, and it's fine. It's a local,
which in the ABR they told us up front that they were going to honor whatever TCO is doing. So right now there are two different leagues you can be playing in actively. You will be following two different rules. In the KFBL, Blasters is a no-go. In the ABR, and I think Coat, Blasters are a go. So that's kind of weird right now, and that creates odd situations where some decks are way better than they are in others, right? Like, that's weird. That shouldn't be the case, but that's on them, right? Like, that's...
I think, actually, in my KFPL match, I played Dave, and he had a Bouncing Kirby blaster deck, and he asked at the beginning, he's like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, well, I think it's live. So we played it live, which is fine. It's adaptive. Doesn't really matter, in my opinion.
Yeah, that needed to be asked by one of the judges. I believe we have said no. But we only said that during an event. No one has actually asked us for an adaptive match, because when we started the league, blasters weren't live anyway.
Right.
So...
And just to be clear, it was Aaron and Tyler were the two on the last Crucible cast, and it was Aaron, like, bouncing questions off Tyler, and Tyler is not he's not a primary Keyforge designer. Like, he works on other games and is helping with Keyforge, so I feel like he's definitely a guy who, he knows the rules, but he's not the guy for the rules. I thought that was Aaron. Like, I thought he was the new guy for super strict reading of the rules, but these new answers are funny.
Yes, I agree. That is the nicest way we can say it. They're funny.
All right. Ewok and I used to play a bunch of miniature games, and they had super exhaustive FAQs, but the problem is they had one official way for the FAQs to come out, but you'd only get one every 6 months. So I don't know the best way to handle it, because I swear once they have an official FAQ thing and route, it comes out super slow. Like that official FAQ was in the back of the rule book, and that's, okay, but doesn't keep up at all.
I will add in, so I play competitive Star Wars minis. We had a new piece that would come out with each set. However, in between that, roughly what I remember, again, this is back a little bit, but every time there was a new rules update, it went into the FAQ sheet that could be viewed online. So you always had access for the tournament organizers. You had access for the players who were competitive to be able to look at that sheet. And as there was an announcement, it was immediately put into a master doc that everyone could see and was locked. And that was on a shared forum board. But then our local piece, everyone who is competitive around the area, we would see it. We'd be able to adjust immediately. And once that was on the sheet, it was live. So if you played on a Saturday and it was put on Friday, you looked at it, you saw it. Most of the players did hear things ahead of time. So you kind of looked, and they would just have the date that was posted when it was updated. So the newest items were in red, which I am seeing FFG doing. But I do think that it can be a little bit more frequent. These shared docs are not that difficult to work with, and it's pretty easy to type in a piece if we're going to be adding it. And you just put in what has changed in a different color. That's my suggestion. I think that it's reasonable versus sitting for 6 months. We do have some resources that we can use this on right now.
Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah, the bouncing blasters, so they definitely have changed some decks. So I don't know. I definitely wouldn't invest money in a bouncing blaster deck. More money than I would if based off the blasters not bouncing, because I would not be surprised for that to get ruled back.
Because if you can go back and read the FAQ does definitely seem against what was said in the email. It reads exactly the opposite of what the response in the email was, for sure. Just does. Okay.
You guys want to get into that last topic, or?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So the last piece that we have two different mentalities here on this. Lottery winner versus the second-hand market. Little bit of insight coming in recently. Both Sheep and I got some Coda boxes. And the real question, are you the type of player that likes to crack decks, and you're hopeful that you're going to be that lottery winner, that next deck you crack, whether that's one, whether that's a box, that's going to be your top deck. That's going to be the top deck that matches your play style, for SAS, whatever it is for you. Or are you the type of person that goes, it's just not feasible that I could honestly open up box 1 or 2 or deck 3, and those 3 decks, I would be better off to spend that same amount on one single deck. So the question is, Sheep, Z, where do you fall in these camps?
I am loss adverse. So the chance that I don't open that box and it has the best deck in the world is too much for me. I can't do it. Like, the thought of giving out sealed decks as prizes gives me the itch, because I'm like, I could be mailing the best deck in the world, and I could have just opened it, and it would be mine. But no, I just gave it like that. I have that weird twitch in me. Like, I want to open product. I like gambling, and I get boxes cheap enough, and I buy cheap boxes, so I'm not gambling with real amounts of dollars. But unquestionably, your Coda boxes were worse than mine. This $140 I spent on 4 Coda boxes did not result in a Coda deck that is better than my best. I got one with a higher SAS, but I don't think it's actually better than my best Coda deck.
And I will say,
I don't think I'm going to get 140 out of these decks. Yeah,
I will say that out of my 3 so far, I well undershot. I have a depressing series of decks. One of those was actually hysterical and was on our AC board. It was bad. There was no question about it. And so some people are looking at, hey, I can turn around this case. If I get 12 decks, I can then put it and try and sell where the secondary market. Yeah, well, and that's the whole nother piece is, are you really selling them? Is this worth anything? I know some people are really in this, Fat Keyforge versus
Fat Forge for life.
God damn.
I knew that response already. Or going ahead and really going, hey, I only need a couple decks. It comes down to space. I know Wookie would be in the background with, we need other variants or other ways to be able to play some of these middling decks. Not your top tier and not your bottom one or two. But that's really the question is it worth it? Or are you better off to be able to go ahead and get, instead of buying those 3 decks, just spend $30 on the secondary market and get one deck that fits in that $30 price range that fits your play style? I don't know. I think there's other options that come into it too.
I'm in the other camp. I filter through decks. I search for decks all the time. I have my top 20 decks is an incredibly high top 20 range. So for me to think that I would open almost any number of boxes and get something that would break my top 20 is real low of a chance. So I look for the secondary market and I get all my stuff there. But yes, I do encourage the lottery gamblers to try to continue to search for stuff because I'm going to be the one there to buy them when you want to sell them. A lot of people that open those stuff that win a lottery ticket have gotten money from many people like me that are secondhand buyers. Like a lot of the casuals of Keyforge are the ones that open the 90 plus SAS decks, and they get a big payday for decks that they just open in sealed play. But because most of my decks that I crack personally used to come from sealed. I used to play 2 to 3 events per week, and half or more of those would be sealed. So I would get a ton of product just through playing the game, supporting the local store, doing all the good stuff a Keyforge player needs to do. So I didn't actually need to buy that much product. I ended up with over 100 AOA decks, and I have never bought a box of AOA because that sounded like a bad idea from go. So yeah, I'm the secondary market purchaser. And yes, keep buying and cracking decks so that I can buy them from you.
See, and I fall right in the middle. I will be honest, I might be leaning a little bit more towards Z right now, but I have not filled that. I look at the price and I'm like, it's $10 for a deck. I'll go and get that deck. And I will purchase it from the local game store. I feel I'm supporting someone that's there. I have no problem with that. I also have an issue with that deck could be the next big deck. I remember one of our sealed events that we had at our local game store early on, and there was someone who was a Magic player. He was a kid, and we were just trying to get another person to make it even. And so I'm like, hey, come in. No. And I ended up buying the deck for him. He played with it, and he did really well because it was a great deck. It wasn't, for the Chainbound, for what we were doing, it was a good deck. And I was still bummed. I still have this thought in my head like, oh, man, I want that deck. I can't go ask the kid for it, who really, afterwards is kind of meh about playing. He never came back after. But I see that deck, and I'm like, I really would like that deck. That could have, it beat most of the other decks that I had pulled at that point, and I was excited by it. But that thought still looms with me of, it could be that next deck. I want it. But as I've been opening these decks, I've been really looking at 2 pieces. One, is Coda on the outs with MM? Looking at the combination of Coda versus MM, I know there was a discussion earlier about we really would have liked to have seen AOA first, then Coda, then Worlds Collide and MM, and I think that would have drastically changed the dynamic of how Keyforge is kind of set up and how it's played out and kind of really scaled up.
A lot of we lost some players in our local due to AOA.
Yeah.
Had it gone the other way, I think we would have gained players during that time because there was an AOA lull that summer, which was really because AOA just wasn't fun to play. So it was just come and wreck AOA with Coda at the time. Or play more sealed AOA or whatever.
Then there's the question, if AOA was the first set, would have the game just never taken off? Because people would have played a game or two and been like, this is just grindy garbage.
I mean, the solution to all of this, AOA just should have never existed.
But I think that AOA in the present meta has some really fun interactions. I mean, I will be that oddball to make it. There's some unique pieces that I enjoy from AOA. Overall, as a whole set, I have some issues with it, but there are some great matchups and some different archetypes that are in AOA that are definitely undervalued, and they're a lot of fun to play.
So AOA has a resurgence right now. I see a lot of it getting played. We talk about it quite a bit. There's no money trading on it, but there are so many SAS-capped events going on right now, and AOA doesn't get good SAS because it's, in general, not a great set. So it also didn't get a lot of tweaks and updates because it didn't need to. It was worse than Coda, so there was no point in spending a whole lot of time optimizing, finding the better deck. So I think there's a lot. If you compare when you get into SAS-capped events, right, when you're talking sub 70 for sure, I think most sub 70 curated AOA decks can often be much better than their Coda rivals because I think the decks are underrated, and there's so many of them you can pick and choose, right? I'm not saying just any 70 AOA is better than any 70 Coda, but when I can start picking and choosing and you give me a number that's 65 or 68 or something in there, I almost always end up on an AOA deck over a Coda deck because I think there are more underrated combo cool things going on in there, but it's not good enough to compete with top tier stuff at all.
I agree. I definitely agree.
So, yeah, AOA, well, everybody knows I like AOA, even though it's bad.
So I guess for me to kind of summarize this up, one, if you're a lottery player, go ahead. I don't buy any lottery tickets, so it's really odd that I see this, but go and grab some decks. And if nothing else, support your local game store right now. They are in desperate need of some help and assistance. And so I definitely encourage that to help any of the local game stores get a little bit of extra money. If not, I start to lean towards, hey, if I'm spending $30, maybe I put it into that secondary market and get one deck that I like if it needs to fill a specific niche. That's kind of where I'm at. Coda being on the outs, I don't know. Some of those decks that I got, they just cannot compete at all with MM. And so MM's a blast to play. I'm having a ton of fun still with it. And I'm curious to see what we can see with KFPL with our SAS cap at 75. So it'll be a lot of fun.
I didn't mention this cast, but I do want to remind people, as far as it's December 5th, it's $10. But for every single player that registers, we have other entities, players, teams that are donating $10 to Doctors Without Borders. We would like to hit 150 people. That would raise $1,500 directly to Doctors Without Borders. Archon's Corner is one of the donors. So I don't remember exactly how much we're donating per player. But Archon's Corner, along with a bunch of other teams, will be doing that $10 match, which is a really good thing. We're happy to be a part of that charitable action through KFPL and Archon's Corner here. So yes, you'll be helping out a good cause and playing some Keyforge. So don't forget that. I forgot to do that when I first mentioned it.
So yeah, opening Coda, it was actually kind of boring after MM. I think, kind of going back to where AOA is underrated in SAS, I think Coda is pretty well rated. Outside of creature decks are now somewhat better than they used to be because of the slower pace with the newer sets. But I feel like Coda is much more solved, and it takes me 15 seconds to look at a Coda deck and be able to guess its SAS, right? And be pretty close every time. And you just know what you're looking for, and they're kind of depressing in that regard. I don't know if I can open any more Coda, because there's nothing chase in it for me anymore, which I found out as I opened these. The only thing I don't have is double time traveler or a 5 control a week or something, that your chance of opening basically doesn't exist, but you go for it anyways. But they're just not exciting to open for me anymore compared to Mass Mutation, where every deck you gotta sit there and think, and then even when you're looking at the deck list and you know what's going on, you're like, well, but the enhancements could totally change how this deck is going to play too, and that just makes Mass Mutation so much more exciting to open and look through.
They just play better too, in general. As far as like I'm not talking about like your A+ deck or whatever. I'm talking about like in general when you open an MM deck, most of them feel way more competitive than the other sets.
Well, I think that falls in that it's not the individual cards. I actually like the individual cards in Coda better, but it's because of the enhancements. So the enhancements can change where the card makeup shows up. So having Amber Pips on specific cards or Capture Pips. And I think Capture, Amber, and the damage, they can really, really drastically impact the game on some of the base stats.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
That's why I'm looking at it and really enjoying MM as a whole. Is the cards themselves are not flashy for the most part. There's some beautiful cards in there. You got some rando cards like Mutant Cut Purse that you're just like, oh, thanks. But what some of our cards bring with enhancements does add to the game. And as a whole, the set is very, very, very well stacked.
Yeah, like Mutagenic Researcher, yes, when you get a 3-power creature on the turn you play him, that sucks, but that card is doing work for your deck. I kind of love that. It's like seeing the one pip in every slot immediately off of one card is very nice.
Okay, so right next week, ABR, which is a league that all three of us are playing in now, although we're on opposite teams. So we can't talk our strategies too much here. But right next week, we have this cap.
We don't play you next week, do we?
I don't know. But, right, but our decks have to have a maximum Amber control of 3. That's the rule for how you pick your deck next week.
Are you on Control the Week?
I looked at 3 decks already.
So I was just doing a very quick look, and this is part of why AOA sucks. Right, I have 560 decks now or something. And it's about half Coda, and then really it's about a quarter Mass Mutation and AOA, and then just some Worlds Collide, because Worlds Collide was just never available bulk cheap for me. But looking, like, in that relative portion, like, 29 of the decks, I have 29 decks in AOA that have an Amber control of 3, and there's only 11 in Coda. And this is, like, whatever it is, 300 decks versus 175 decks, and there's almost 3 times as many and 1/3 as decks in AOA, which is why AOA is terrible, right? There's just so many low A decks. And then there is 1 Worlds Collide and 2 Mass Mutation decks in my collection that would meet those requirements, right? There's just so few in these newer sets where the Amber control is low. And it's why these sets just make better, more fun sealed base play, because you have the ability to do something against your opponent.
So that's really interesting. I just plugged mine in, and out of my 252 decks, I have 1 for Call of the Archons, 1 for Mass Mutations, 4 for Worlds Collide, and 9 for AOA.
Yeah, AOA just doesn't have Amber control in a lot of decks, and that's what makes it so bad. And that's why a typical AOA deck in the mid-60s or whatever won't necessarily beat your typical 60s Coda deck, because you're unlikely to have the Amber control in comparison. But the curated ones, when you get to pick, and you're picking your decks with multiple Abods, Binate, Rupture, Interdimensional Graph stuff, like, it can do it. But just as a random pull, it's terrible.
All right, boys. I think that we've talked enough. Do you have anything else that you want to add to the Keyforge community? Say goodbye.
Nope, I think that's good. I was interested to see how many decks I have that meet that.
Okay, we'll give you a little bit of time, because I think that's important.
You have 1,200 right now or something like that?
I have 1,200 something decks. It might be 1,300 because this is just owned and not sale.
Peasant over here is saying 252 as you 2 whales are like,
I'm 594. I got to go buy 6 more decks.
Goodness.
All right, so I have Wait, why isn't it holding my constraint? My decks, Amber Control. Max 3. I have 86 decks that meet this requirement. Do I want numbers? Okay, so Call of the Archons, 30.
Oh.
Age of Ascension, 23. Mass Mutation. Oh, guys,
and
remember,
that's 100. Like...
I only have 100 Age of Ascension decks.
And 23 of them.
23 of them, so 23%. Like, I have like 600 Call of the Archons. Mass Mutations, 1. I have one deck in Mass Mutations that meets that. And I have like 50 total and 32 Worlds Collide decks.
Yeah,
I have a ton of Worlds Collide.
I have 2 out of 115 in Mass Mutation that hit the limit there of 3. So, like, yeah, those low Amber Control decks.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so 23% of my AOA decks and 1 out of 84 of my Mass Mutations, guys. That right there is why opening a Mass Mutation decks on average does not suck. That is the answer between the two sets. Like, and
we haven't even looked at C, and like C is often
yeah. That's before you look at other stuff. Well, the C is often bad in Worlds Collide. Worlds Collide had really low C deck, but
AOA didn't have a ton of C either.
I don't know because they were so bad you didn't even need to look. Like, it's just bad. That said, I do believe that that's where some of the stuff is underrated in AOA. When we talked about earlier about the arc not being as up to date for AOA, I think some of it is in the C, so it probably does have more C in actual play than what it's showing. We just don't play those cards,
so we don't look at them. Yep.
So they never get adjusted up. And that happens. It's an imperfect system, and it always is going to be because it's based on player-driven data.
Yep. I'm pretty sad that the next KFPL limits me to 1% because otherwise I would be playing 3 AOA decks for sure, and so would.
Well, there were multiple reasons why it was done that way.
And several other people I've talked to, probably all on triple AOA decks if that was the choice.
Yes. And there's multiple reasons why it is 3 different sets, capped at 75, no Heart of the Forest, because that card can burn in whatever the Crucible Hell is.
And that is where we wrap up today's show. Either that or old man Dakota rings.
Yes, old man Dakota rings. This is how we communicate with Wookie.
Shout out to Wookie.
He has turned to an old man. All right, well, thanks everybody for listening. We are out for today, and we should expect to be here next week.
Yeah. Not on Thursday.
All right, goodbye and good night, everybody.
With baby oil. Turkey and sweet potato pie. Sammy Davis Jr. only had one eye. Oh, turkey for the girls and